Jeez, yeah, I'm sick of talking about myself in third person. It's just
I would like to now feature the featured comic that I featured.
feature. Feature. Oh, jeez.
It's called Back to the Future.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 413. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Baines. Hello, Baines.
Hello, how's it going?
Fantastic. We can't have Pit or Tance today because it's the 13th and that means they've synchronized their sicknesses together.
Oh, yeah. They're very superstitious.
Exactly. They are incredibly. They actually are very superstitious. So yeah, they get sick on the same day.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what superstition is, but all I know is they're refusing to leave their homes. The QUACKCAST episode has a 13 in it. So it seems a little strange to me, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what can you do, babes? You know, right?
Yeah.
No, they're fantastic people. Tance has got an incredible cough, and Pitface is under the weather. So they'll be back again next week, hopefully. All right. We're going to be talking about structures and things that subvert it. Like the hero's journey or formulas that a lot of creative projects are structured within. And there's various reasons why things have to be structured this way. When you structure a thing with the hero's journey, you can create an exciting, interesting story with, readily acknowledged beats that everyone understands and that, work out because it's been done many times. It's been proven that it works. But, say commercial projects have to do it that way, within formulas and structures like that because it sells not only to the audience, but it sells to executives, editors, and producers, investors, things like this. They can more easily understand it when they watch it, or they're going to pay for it and invest in it. Especially publishers, things like this, they can more easily understand it, so they can understand how they're going to sell it, or they can categorize it. Oh, it's like this thing. It's like this thing. I've seen this. This worked before. This is sort of the same. This will work. So that's why a lot of commercial projects have to follow the structure. But we'll get into that when we get into the QUACKCAST proper. First up, we've got to introduce the feature. Feature was a feature that I featured, Scarred Eden. So,
Scarred Eden.
I'll talk about that, Scarred Eden. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature this week was Scarred Eden. Beatrice has been experiencing the same disturbing dream for the last 8 years. Sometimes she can barely wake from them. She always sees a woman with yellow eyes. This time, the woman spoke to her. Let me out. What does it mean? Is it more than just a dream? Is there an entity trying to communicate with her or possess her? Scarred Eden has deliciously coloured, wonderfully drawn digital artwork and a beautifully proportioned main character. It's a mystery story that's slowly developing and deepening. The story Scarred Eden is written, created, coloured, drawn all by Dame Helsing, rated M. I quite enjoyed this work. It's a lovely coloured work, not just because it's got colour, but because it's very intelligently coloured. There's a nice colour palette that's been used for it, as well as nice colours, nice lighting and colours chosen for various scenes. So it's a good-looking comic. But not only that, as I say, the character is beautifully proportioned. She has, nice wide hips, very slim waist sort of thing. It's very womanly kind of figure, so it's quite attractive. Beatrice, that is. Yeah, so it's great looking comic. It's a mystery slowly deepening over the course of the comic. There are many pages to go. There's only a few pages on Drunk Duck at the moment, but the comic, I believe, there's many more pages to go because it's drawn out. Quite a lot of it's been drawn out already, and Dame Helsing is posting it a bit at a time on Drunk Duck, which is great. So there's more pages to go, and you won't have to worry about delays or anything. It's going to be a nice regularly posted comic. So yeah, enjoy Scarred Eden by Dame Helsing, rated M. And that was our featured comic, Scarred Eden. Alright, so next up we have the featured music. Gunwillis has given us the theme to Escape Velocity. Okay. Escape Velocity is a nice little comic about space. But the music, oh my god, the music. Blinking readouts on screens and dials, blinking stars outside the thick glass sealed against the vacuum. This is the future, and the future is space, deep in the cold black void, in an isolated oasis of heat, light and breathable oxygen inside a space-traveling vessel, the only place out here that survival is possible. So, take it away, Gunwillis, with Escape Velocity. That was our theme. Thank you so much for that, Gunwillis. Escape Velocity, which is a comic by the Jolly, I'm not sure, rated M for magnificent. That's what M stands for.
Fantastic.
No, that would be
wonderful.
F.
Oh, that's true.
And that would be W. Oh, Jesus, Baines. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. All right. So, structures and things that subvert them, or that are able to subvert them, or ignore them, or whatever. So yeah, like I was saying, commercial products usually have to follow these formulas and structures in order to just get past the first hurdle. It's a commercial reality, unfortunately, with a lot of these things.
I mean, these are expensive, especially if you're talking about a series or movie or something. There's a massive amount of money that, like you were saying, investors have to put in money. People have to be confident that they're going to get their money back and all this kind of stuff. So it's a huge investment, and they want to see that this is going to be a thing that appeals to enough people that it's going to pay off, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And movie executives are notoriously conservative in their approach to these things. They're gun shy. There's a good reason for that, because, as you say, there's a lot of money invested, and they don't want to bankrupt their studio. and lose their jobs.
Exactly.
It's the same.
These are not creative decisions at this, when we're talking structure at this level.
Yeah.
It's not. That's not what it is.
This commercial reality. It's the same with book publishers. They
Sure.
look at works,
Yep.
Comics, big commercial comics. There's a lot of money involved. Even with a commercial comic, there's a lot of money involved, because unlike a webcomic, where a lot of these things are just done by either two people or one person, commercial comics, you have to pay a writer, a penciler, an inker, a colorist, all these separate people, as well as your promotion and all that kind of stuff, and all the office staff. All this money, all this stuff costs money, layers and layers of it. A commercial comic might cost like $30,000 or $40,000, something like that. Maybe that's cheap for a commercial comic. A lot of money is invested in that.
Yeah. And in a book, promoting and publishing a book and stuff like that.
Exactly, it's the same kind of thing. That again will cost like $30,000-$40,000, and that's a cheap kind of book, and that's just the payment to the author often. There's way more money than that goes into it for promotion and the editors, everybody who works behind the scenes has to be paid. So it's huge investments. That's why things tend to be conservative and not too experimental, the way webcomics are. That's why there is such a huge difference with webcomics, and we don't tend to follow the hero's journey as rigidly or at all, or formulas, unless we feel like it. That's following formulas, following tropes is more a case of preference than necessity with webcomics. And that's how it will always be, which is one reason why webcomics don't automatically translate over onto, into commercial works, because it's a publisher or, people will look at that and think, I really don't understand how I could sell this. This isn't the kind of story I'm used to. Or if they do sell it, they would hammer it into a commercial structure. Or, even like, say, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I think it is. That was started out as a webcomic. Now, I haven't read the original webcomic, but I suspect that might follow that more commercial structure, and that may be one of the reasons why it crossed over.
I haven't read that either, but I saw the movie, and you can take a piece of material like a graphic novel or a comic or whatever that doesn't have that specific structure. Often they don't, because because of the way comics are released, like they run for decades or years, or they tell a really small story, or they do things that are, like you were saying, that are off the sort of main path of what a story is structured like.
Yeah.
But you take that material, and with great success, like it's been done, where people take a comic and they develop the material into a story that's not, it's not necessarily cliche or structured in a bad way, but it's structured in a way that, people can watch it and it can be understood and it can be felt like a story should in say a movie or in a season of TV or whatever. So they'll have to take the material and adapt it to make a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, like a movie does or whatever, and make it work. It's been done with great success, and if you look at behind the scenes on some of these adapted pieces that are done really well, Scott Pilgrim, I don't think was a success, but I think people liked it. Certain fans liked it.
I loved
Hellboy, the original Yeah, I enjoyed it. Hellboy, the movie that was done years ago, was an adaptation of the Hellboy comic, obviously.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were changed to give it kind of emotional weight and to give the character to have a mentor figure where it wasn't really that way in the comics, and to sort of emphasize and de-emphasize different things to give it to make it work as a movie, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of part of the process in a way, and it's not. I mean, stuff like that is not necessarily done out of fear. They're like creative decisions and decisions to make the movie work. So, I mean, that's one aspect of it. And then another is like, no, we have to make this appeal to everyone. And that's when it's the fear-based kind of...
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When they decide, people aren't going to understand it, or this particular kind of way of telling a story, or, whatever.
Or like, this thing is really hot right now, or that's really popular right now, and then trying to chase trends in that way. I think that's done at maybe a studio level or the level of money people generally. They're not creative decisions. They're like trying to play the system and trying to reduce risk. In that way, that so often backfires and makes for worse pieces of fiction and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a problem with doing the Me Too kind of work. Me Too, no, that means something else these days.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? Oh, yeah.
The original meaning of Me Too. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Where you're chasing what's popular or what was successful earlier this year. You're kind of going after that. That's in huge movies have done that. Again, there's a huge financial risk and a lot at stake, so you can understand the impulse. But, there was a lot about the DC universe, and it's kind of wildly back and forth playing with tones, even in individual movies, where they're doing a dark and gritty movie like Suicide Squad was. And then Guardians of the Galaxy is really popular from Marvel, and then they go in and try to re-edit and try to turn it into Guardians of the Galaxy in the midst of shooting and editing.
Oh god!
It's like, oh my god, what are you doing? And then it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. But okay, yeah. All right.
Did I go off subject there?
Yeah, excuse me, but yeah, no, you're right. These are good subject to follow. But for structurally, what can? Oh god, now I've sort of lost. I can't tie it into that.
That's okay. Don't. I think I went off subject there.
Oh no, you're fine for doing that. It's just me needing to follow the structure of the QUACKCAST and being too conservative.
Don't look for this structure in a QUACKCAST. With any kind of structure in the QUACKCAST.
All right, yeah. So, all right, formulas as well. Now, this is something I love in anime. I love a lot of anime. Formulas can be quite pleasant and comforting. Like, fish fingers, mashed potatoes, comfort food.
That was a good anime.
But they can also be incredibly stifling. So so many times I've sort of been looking around for anime and I've come across, oh my god, not another damn school anime where there's a harem and this uncomfortable teen kid with no personality and nothing interesting about him who befriends 5 different amazing looking females who just all unaccountably happen to be interested in him. And of course it's the first one who's the one he forms the lasting love with, who he's got the huge crush on, for no other reason other than she's the first one. And
hey man, spoiler alert.
And they always follow that damn same structure, which can quickly become quite frustrating as a watcher, because you will always know what's happening. There's nothing that's going to be very surprising to you about that work. So it's going to be quite uninteresting after a while. And it's the same with movies too. You know, the hero structure can be very comforting and easy to understand, and it helps you more easily identify with characters and their problems and issues. But on the other hand, it can become very what's the word I'm looking for? It can become annoying. It can help you predict everything about the story far too much, so it causes you to lose interest in the story. You know, you're watching this action movie or whatever, Star Wars, I don't know, and you're so intimately familiar with the structure of the hero's journey, or you know, as is followed by a lot of these action films or whatever. So you know what's going to happen to the character. You know, the character's going to lose everything now. This is where everything goes wrong for them. It's the last third of the film, so now this is where the character has their moment of doubt. And yes, now we're going to come across the redeeming thing and the climax. Yep, that's where it's going to happen. And you're no longer interested in it. And it's not because you've studied the hero's journey, so you know it. It's because you've watched so many films that you've become aware of the structure that way.
So, I agree with that. I was thinking that as you were saying it. It's like I have a great interest in structure, and I've studied a lot of that stuff and read up on it and everything. And I like analyzing movies and shows that way. A lot of the times, if the show's working, I kind of forget about it. It's hard to keep track of that stuff because you kind of get immersed, in what you're watching, which is good. That's what you want. Like even someone who's interested in structure and kind of looking for it, like you get to kind of care about, like by the midpoint, you're like, wow, I actually, like you care about this character and you're not thinking that way. So that's when it's done well.
Right.
I mean, there's,
it's done
many
so
occasions.
Well that it's hidden.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's just like the fiction, like the process is working like it's supposed to. You get invested in the characters, and you want to know what happens. You're not thinking about, okay, we're 3/4 of the way through. Now it's got to get really bad. I mean, I think that way, but that doesn't take away the enjoyment for me. I like it. You don't want people to be sitting there, like you said, even if they haven't studied any of this stuff, and just feeling like, okay, this is so predictable. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know what they're going to say. I know this and that. Because then, people are bored and they don't watch, and you're done for.
The worst thing that can happen for me is when I'm watching something and I know the character's next line. When they become that predictable,
that's bad.
Then
I saw this.
Go on.
I've seen several movies, where I'm like saying the lines like a minute before they happen. I'm like, I know the exact thing that someone's going to say here. Like it's been so telegraphed. So hiding the structure is, I think, important. I think structure is important. I think there's definitely more flexibility in books and comics. Maybe another reason why, so many comics are being made into movies is you get different kind of things, and like they can wait and see what's successful and then take it and adapt it. It's a lot of money to be invested, but it's so much less than a movie or TV show.
Yeah.
So, and a webcomic, funnily enough, like I thought, like thinking in terms of structure, just out of fear, when I started mine, I was like, it has to, hit these marks. Not that my plots are super structured or that I have a real, it's not a genre. Like mine isn't a sci-fi or a fantasy. It's basically a sitcom with very few rules, really. But I did think that, okay, this has to, I have to try to have this certain kind of appeal. This is when I started the comic, I'm talking. I was developing it. I wanted it to be this and that. And a lot of the appeal was to me, like there's certain things I wanted to do. But I did have things in there like, okay, people will like it if it's this and if it's that. Not realizing that a webcomic is the place to take more risks and to kind of really do more what you want.
Exactly, because you haven't got all that stuff to lose like these big commercial products have. So you should embrace that freedom.
You lose time and some effort, but it's time and effort well spent.
Yeah.
For most of us, because you learn how to tell a story better, and you learn how to, hopefully draw better. Theoretically, I didn't, but a lot of the times people learn to do all that stuff better. You just get better at it and better at dialogue, and so it's.
Yeah, well, there's also the fact that, as I was saying, these things can become very predictable. But in comics, we've got the freedom not to be predictable. But that's one of the things we can really makes webcomics and things a lot more interesting often than watching, more than looking at, than viewing, than consuming more commercial products, because they can do what they want. So yeah, that really does make them more interesting. I know, because I consume a lot of anime because it's easy to watch online and watch when I'm working. I need that to have that going on while I'm doing work on comics or whatever other creative projects. And so I'm intimately familiar with all the formulas and structures that a lot of animes have. And they love their formulas. They really do. They just repeat them endlessly. So
right.
But so I've found that ones I'm drawn to are the ones that go outside of that. The ones that depict adult characters rather than child characters. Those kind of ones. The ones that subvert the harem, that do something else that's different. Anything that goes outside of the typical formula or structure is far more interesting. Not just for novelty, but because you're not predicting it when you're watching it. So you can watch it and things are all new and interesting, rather than just giving you the same old every time. Because a lot of creative works, when they follow formulas too much, it's like, oh, I've seen this before, even though you haven't. So that can happen. You can get that kind of problem.
Yeah.
As if, nothing in the work is... I mean, it's not that you have to be original every single time, because that's impossible. It's that you shouldn't be too unoriginal, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other half of the structure, right? I hope I'm not repeating myself here too much, but I'm not even sure. But structure is there because, if something is completely structureless, you can lose people. People get bored because it's not going anywhere, or there's no conflict, or there's no antagonist, or it's too predictable. It's sort of A, B, C, D, and everything that's going to happen. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I like about structure. It's kind of like how stories are actually built. Can be kind of mapped out. Whether it's going to work or not can't be as clearly mapped out, I don't think. You kind of, when you have sort of your basic structure, if you're writing something, you then, I think, try to hide it with dialogue, with specific actions, specific character traits and character quirks and quirks of plot. I mean, sometimes things like going wrong and being unpredictable in the right way. That's kind of stuff you do to hide the structure, the underlying structure, so it's sort of obscured. It's not just like this sort of boring checklist, which I'm sure you've seen. I know I've seen in movies. You're talking about anime. I haven't seen enough anime to know, but
yeah.
I know what you're getting at, and I've definitely seen movies over the last however many years that are ripping off the original Star Wars and just doing the hero's journey and trying to set up a franchise. And it just doesn't work. Like, part 2 never comes out because it just fails, because it's just like, you're not feeling it, or people don't care. It's like, yeah, you did the steps, but it's not interesting.
Yeah, well, that's a good example. We always go to the Star Wars thing, but especially The Force Awakens again, that follows way too closely the structure, not just of Hero's Journey, but the first film. So you know everything that's going to happen to that character pretty much. There are some surprises, but they're few and far between. But the structure is so solid and so unimaginatively followed that the lead character, Rey, her path. There's no mystery to that at all. You absolutely know her path, which makes her a very boring, dull character. Not because she's badly acted. No, she's great acted. Daisy, whoever she is, she's a fantastic actor. Played the role well. But because the structure is so bad, or so unimaginatively used, it turns her into a boring character.
That was kind of a movie that it's kind of like the plot points are there, but it unlike the original Star Wars, it doesn't really have an arc. Like, in a weird way, the structure is kind of there, but it's kind of not. That's how I see it anyway. Like, it doesn't have a ramping up of tension.
It's not intelligent structure. No, it's the character only gets to where she is because she is always going to do it. Because she is a Luke Skywalker, even though she's not following, an intelligent, to structure intelligently the way Luke Skywalker is. I'm not saying she's not intelligent, but the movie's not intelligent. That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's like the struggle and
she's
the learning of new abilities.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, are you talking about like sort of the level of coincidence and the not training and the lack of struggle, maybe?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. She's going to get there because she's dressed in white, for a start. She's bloody Luke Skywalker. She's gonna get there.
And the powers are kind of there. They just kind of come to her. She doesn't really learn them. And people have talked about this endlessly and still are online. I know that. It's sort of like the structure's there, but you're not feeling it. And you have like sort of a mentor figure die, like Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. And just like this whole structure repeated in so many movies, not forget about Star Wars, but that type of character dies at the right time. But for me, I'm sitting there like, why? Like, I was so excited to see this movie. Why am I not feeling this at all? Why is this doing nothing for me? It was pretty upsetting.
Yeah.
But I find that in a lot of movies, you're like, this is just boring. That, because it was Star Wars and had that brand, it has that goodwill still, or had. It's like, man, I was so ready to like this. I was so excited. It's got it's got all the trappings of classic Star Wars. Blah blah blah.
Just
anyway.
Yeah.
It's just the sense isn't happening. I don't care. Like, why do I not care? Like, it's very, very odd. So the structure is there, but it's just very much surface level, like a checklist of events.
In this instance, I would say it was following the structure of the first movie, but not the hero's journey structure properly. It's only following the hero's journey coincidentally. It's not well really in the real DNA of the film. It's only in the pale imitation because it happens to be following the first film.
Yeah, like in terms of a character arc, like taking a character from one place to another in a satisfying way, it's kind of not there.
Exactly. So, webcomics is our main thing, of course. We were talking when we were before, off air, about the latest featured comic, Scarred Eden, which is an interesting webcomic, fantastic looking artwork. I advise you all to have a look and read the featured comic. Yes. Now, Scarred Eden, this is a comic of like, I can't remember how many pages, maybe 30 or so pages or so far. And I was saying to Baines that this comic doesn't follow a traditional structure, in that what we have so far in the comic is an introduction, quite a long introduction. That's all the comic has taken up so far. It doesn't actually get to, to the meat of its title, Scarred Eden. We don't even know what that is yet. And I was saying, if this was a commercial work, that would have, had to have done that, like, within the first 2-3 pages. Maybe 5 pages. You'd get through your intro, and you'd be into it. But because it's a webcomic, it doesn't have to do that. It has the freedom to expand the introduction for the whole chapter. And that's fine. It's engaging enough that I featured it. So what do you say to that, Baines?
Well, that's the thing with like webcomics. That's what I was going to say earlier. We were off air. I was like, I'll save this for on air, because I didn't know how much else I'd have to say. But webcomics are interesting in that when you start reading a webcomic, even if you're 10, 20, 30 pages in, you don't know how long that story is going to be, So you can't really look at it like, the way I look at a movie, at least in the beginning, is like, okay, well, we're 10 minutes in, we're probably going to get, like, the world is going to be shaken up. Something's going to happen. 25 minutes in, okay, now we're going into Act 2. Like, this will be the premise and action. In a webcomic, it's different because you don't know how long the story is going to be. Like, is this story only going to be 50 pages long, or is it going to go for 2,000 pages and more? So the shape of the story is it could be anything, You still need a character with a problem that people care about. Those structural elements still have to be there. People have to care enough to keep reading and have questions.
Oh, yeah.
Enough that they want to read the next page, So there's that stuff kind of has to be there or people will get bored. But the overall structure is kind of, it can be invisible in that way, because you don't know how far off the ending might be.
Yeah.
That's sort of the risk you take as a webcomic reader, jumping in too, in a good way,
Oh, very true. Like with a commercial comic, it would be, I don't know, an issue is 30 pages or something like that?
Yeah, you're holding it. If you're holding it in your hand, or you're looking at, okay, this is page 1 of 30, you know how long at least this issue is going to be, whether it ends the story or not. You at least know that. And
as a as a writing team, whatever, as an art team, you have to capture that person within the first couple of pages, or your project's going to fail. You're not going to have a saleable piece of work that you have to sort of capture people. And again, webcomics don't have that pressure.
Yep.
For a book, it's even harder. Say if you're an unpublished author, not only do you have to have something that's in a popular formula, like, I don't know, Twilight's popular, so you have to do something that's Me Too, or Harry Potter, those kind of things. You also have to have something that's going to capture the imagination of the I don't know what they're called, editors, whatever, the people who sort of go through the slush poll is what they call it. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to capture them enough, or else your work's just going to be totally chucked away. So it has to be done to a particular formula, but not only on on an overall structural kind of way. It has to be done to a formula that's going to get people very, very quickly. Do you know what I mean, Baines? Sort of. Yeah. It's it's not just the hero's journey, it's the hero's journey told in a certain way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of, or at least grabbing people in the beginning, and then you have like marketing people and editors and so forth, or agents or whatever, being able to look at it, and they have the knowledge of the marketplace, and they're able to say, okay, I see what this is, I can sell it, or I can't. Like this, there's nowhere to sell this thing. That's
Yeah, very true. So webcomics don't have that, as we're saying, over and over, don't have that pressure, which is a huge advantage. Can't be understated as a huge advantage. So
gives you more freedom. Yeah, more freedom to do unusual stuff. Yeah.
But as a webcomic, that means what you should do is you shouldn't imagine or pretend as if you do have those problems there. It's good to learn from it because you still want to capture your reader's attention, but there are other ways to do that than just structure and formula. You can do that with fantastic artwork or story tricks, whatever.
Story tricks,
flashbacks, flash forwards, that kind of stuff. Always very clever. Yeah. So there's that kind of aspect. But, oh God, what was I going to talk about? Going off on that idea. We should have damn bloody Pitface and Tanserine to save us.
Well, Tans has written novels, right? So
it
would be interesting to get her take on.
Oh, definitely. She's actually done novels and movie scripts as well. So
right,
she knows what she's talking about. We're just sort of blathering on, pretending as if we do.
I mean, there is a kind of thing of, and this is probably going off subject too, but in terms of finding the right readers, if you're just doing a webcomic, and you can do blurbs for it and all that kind of stuff, and sort of decide, I don't know if people should do this or they should just kind of do whatever they want. I don't know. But if you want a readership, like kind of putting forward what your story is, at least in terms of what kind of conflict is it, what kind of tone is it, is obviously helpful. Because you want people to be able to find, people who want what you're doing to be able to find what you're doing,
Oh, yeah, working to a genre or a popular theme or whatever.
Or at least, at least kind of, like having, okay, this is a dark comedy, or this is a satirical whatever, this is a romance, some kind of magical romance, or it's a whatever, like in that kind of tone territory. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if that's good or not. Like, I mean, it's nice that webcomics are kind of this Wild West in a way. Like, you kind of go into something and you have no idea what it might be.
Exactly. I think as a webcomicer, you should always be aware that you don't have to follow within. You don't have to go along the beaten path. You can take your own direction. I've read, especially manga kind of looking webcomics. So people have done a manga type webcomic, but they've also followed the manga story formulas really closely. And that's not always a bad thing. I mean, I've featured manga style comics that follow the manga style a bit too closely, so closely that it can be predictable. And I've seen this sometimes in webcomics that they do, for whatever reason, decide to follow too much of a formula or a commercial structure. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that is inherently a bad thing. Maybe it can make them more saleable. Maybe that's a good idea if you want to go and shop your project around. But generally, I would say it's something to stay away from because you don't have those pressures. What would you reckon? So there are some webcomics that are done and you really can see, okay, this thing would translate very easily to a commercial work, perhaps this guy is, just testing the waters, this girl, this guy, whatever, they're testing the waters with this work as a webcomic, and they're probably going to turn this into some kind of commercial project later on. So for that kind of thing, yeah, maybe it is a good idea to try and make your stuff as commercial as possible.
Well, I mean, I agree with what you initially said, actually, because I think that's really well put. And that trying to do that when you're doing a webcomic is not the way to go, usually. I've heard this advice, I think, for indie movies as well.
Okay.
Like trying to do a super commercial romantic comedy when you're an indie filmmaker is very silly because you don't have A-list. I mean, it's a little different, I guess, in that way because you're actually making a movie.
Yeah.
But like you don't have A-list actors, you don't have A-list production. So doing this kind of more traditional story when you're when your means are limited is a mistake. Like you should be trying to be original as you can and to be as interesting as you can and to do sort of off the beaten track kind of stuff.
Right. So playing to your strengths really rather than creating a weakness.
Exactly, yeah. And I would say similar in a webcomic. Like you should be, I'm not saying I did this because I didn't really think this way. I was kind of being more traditional maybe. And when I do another one, maybe I'll be even more traditional. But maybe I won't.
Oh, jeez.
But maybe doing things like making it as good as you can and as original as you can. That's a tough word. I don't know about that. But to make it as good as you can, to do exactly what you want to do rather than trying to play to a market, I think is a better idea when you're doing a webcomic.
Yeah, exactly. Because it can be so disappointing to see something that follows a commercial structure when there's all this freedom available out there. And you think, well, I could just go out and, like watching an indie film that tries to follow a commercial a big budget structure. You'd think, well, if I wanted that, I'd just, go for Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that. I'd go and watch a big budget film. I don't want to see someone half-ass it.
Yeah.
Why would I bother doing that? Yeah. So that's a good point. Play to your strengths and actually take advantage of this freedom to do something new and interesting. Yeah. I find those although speaking that way, some of the comics that I've featured that have gone a very traditional route in their storytelling have been incredibly popular with readers. The people who have gone and checked out the feature, they've loved them. So
you're talking about ones that are traditional or ones that aren't?
No, ones that follow traditional structure.
Oh,
Simple,
okay. Well, yeah.
They follow in a really basic way. So maybe that's my bias as someone who has read a lot of webcomics, a lot, hundreds of webcomics I've featured over the years. So that could be part of it. Reader bias. So I've read so many and my tastes have changed and gone out of variance with the kind of people who are more casual readers. They read one every now and again.
Yep.
So that means I'm more novelty, stuff like that. Unusual stuff takes my fancy more than the more casual readers. So yeah, maybe I'm not a good kind of a guide for knowing what most people like.
Well, I mean, it's more a matter of like, don't do it out of fear.
Yeah.
In your webcomic, don't try to follow what's popular out of fear, because the stakes are really low in a webcomic. You can do what you want to do.
Yeah, that's an important thing. Yeah, the stakes are low. You're not going to lose $700 million on
Exactly.
You're not going to lose like massive amounts of money and stuff. It's just time. But the longer you spend on something, that time is often usually an investment because you're learning more and more each time you work on it. So, you can only gain from what you lose.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible, trite way of saying it. You can only gain from what you lose.
I mean, I do think learning about structure, learning what works, and learning what in terms of story is a good idea. Kind of slavishly following cliches and copying things that are popular is a bad idea.
Yeah, as a general rule.
That's a general rule. Yeah. I mean, we've talked before about like you're not going to reinvent the wheel probably. So there are,
Exactly. You're never going to be totally original with what you're doing in comics.
Yeah. That's why when I said original, I kind of hesitated. Like, I didn't want people to think, anyone who's listening to this, I didn't want them to think that, I have to be completely original, because that's pretty much impossible.
No, but you don't have to go, okay, in this comic, I'm just going to have to establish everything very, very quickly, the goodies and the baddies, and the conflict, everything like that, and, have everything moving quite fast. Got to get to the first major conflict, and then proceed, and then we'll have the bikini episode. Think about anime; they always have that. Jeez,
beach, hot springs.
Oh, exactly. Oh God, anime. There are some things that irritate me so much. There's the hot spring stuff or the beach. That's a really easy one to point to. The thing I hate above everything else is the character has their first first conflict, and then in the end of the show, you'll see off to the side some other wise characters looking on smirking, like either in a crystal ball or on a video camera or from a high cliff. They'll look on and smirk and they'll say, it's starting. It's all going to plan.
Okay, right, yeah.
Just as I envisioned.
That's great.
Oh, jeez. Everything is coming into place. And you think, oh my God, yeah, this in the last 3,785 animes that have done that. Don't do it. Don't. No one likes that. I mean, do people actually like it? I did that in bloody Pinky TA as well. I actually did that. Yeah, I had characters doing that. And one day I'm going to cut that bit out. And I should use that as a cover for this QUACKCAST too. I'm going to cut that out and not have it. I'm going to do a major edit and retcon my story not to have that. Because I hate that. So
that's already been posted, that page?
Yeah,
obviously.
That's in there. Yeah. I feel so ashamed now.
Hey, live and learn. There's no need for shame.
It's all going to plan. Yeah. Oh, God, it's so unimaginative and terrible. Well... Yeah.
It depends. Sometimes maybe it's the right... maybe it works.
No, no, it never does. It's always bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's worse than anything. It's worse than Mary Sue's. It's worse than fridging. It's worse. It's all going to plan. Oh, God. I hate that. Well... I think...
Everything is unfolding as I have foreseen.
Oh, God. Oh, jeez. You know what I would love to have when that happened? Some character going, everything is unfolding. Another character immediately just deflating that, like saying, oh, it is not, you big liar. You've never, you never foresaw anything. You just... Seeing these characters for the first time. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or some.
No, I saw it coming. I did. I saw it. They start arguing.
Well, the characters, are looking at the action on a video screen. Everything is happening as I foreseen. And the main character that they're actually talking about bursts into the room and kicks them in the balls and says, "No, it isn't, you bullshitter."
Yeah, as he's saying that, then like the heroes / police / whatever burst in, and like the evil plans fall apart completely. So instead of like being an artificial kind of keep watching kind of thing, it's the ending. That would be fun.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, they're just trying to save face. Didn't foresee any of this. And, then they go down.
Exactly. Do something like that. Mess it up. Or, you know what? Speaking of that, I was watching this excellent video YouTube thing. This critic, Brandon's Cult Movie Reviews. And he did one based on this terrible movie by this Canadian hair metal rock singer called Thor. I think
I've seen it. I've seen all of them.
Oh, you've seen it. I think Pitface actually saw this movie too a long time ago. Anyway, so this movie happens with this heavy metal guy that goes to this abandoned farm where something awful happens many years ago, and he's taking his whole band there, and they set up in this farmhouse to do this produce some music. So they're gonna go away to retreat to produce a whole lot of songs, like a lot of bands do. We used to do. So he does that. But meanwhile, while he's doing that, all his band members and like groupies and hangers-on are sort of getting killed off by monsters in horrible ways. And what happens in the end is this woman that he's sleeping with turns into Satan, and the Satan character goes, "Ha, ha, ha. It's all coming, just as I have planned it, and now I've drawn you into my sticky web. I'm going to kill you." But the interesting thing happens, and what ties in exactly what I've been talking about, is that Thor says, "Ha ha ha, no, you've been drawn into my plan. And this was I created this whole situation with this world. None of what has happened has really existed. This is my plan." And he subverts it. I mean, this is a absolutely vomitsome, terrible movie in every single way. There's nothing good about it except for that. And I thought that was an interesting way of going about it. So, the evil character who thinks, haha, now it's the denouement. I'm gonna bring everything, and this is where my evil plan comes into action, and I just have to kill the last guy, and it's all done. No, the hero subverted that, and that was his plan all along, and that's an interesting way of doing it. I like that. Even though it was such a terrible film, that was a good idea. So there we are.
Lovely.
Yeah, should we anything else we should talk about?
No, I think that's a neat subject.
Cool. Okay, so remember to think about that when you're doing comics with the structure. We can be better, Baines. We can be better.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.